welcome to Bad Law, Worse Facts. I'm your host, Michael Tekla. Today I got on a really good friend of mine. He just got $1 million settlement on a case that at one point in time you didn't even know what you were doing on the case, huh?
It was definitely one of the more complex cases I've seen.
Yeah, and so friend's name is Pulkit. He's over at the UK law firm. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How'd you get there? And, tell me a little back history.
Yeah, so Andrew Kumar was my first boss out of law school, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was my first boss. Him and his former partner had just started a law firm, and so my job was to kind of be secretary, paralegal attorney. One positive thing about that was that you got to learn the industry pretty well before you got started, rather than just the law side. And then went over to Eric Nielsen's office. He's a great trial lawyer, and he taught me a lot. And then I met a woman who's better than me in many ways. Turns out to be my wife now. And, I got up to Dallas. I worked for a great plaintiffs firm up there.
I didn't know you lived in Dallas for a while.
Yeah, I was there for a couple of years.
That's why you got the nice suit, the little hodgepodge going thing, man. Okay, I see it now.
Yeah. And then I went to a defense firm for a little bit. Not my cup of tea.
I don't think it's anyone's cup of tea. I think people just do it because it's a good paycheck. But
the thing I can appreciate about having been there is that there's a lot of good people on that side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who, what they want out of the law is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you want good, hardworking people on that side because when they see a legitimate case, they're going to try and get you paid.
Yeah. They're trying to take care of you, take care of the client, right? Because they know that something bad happened and something needs to be rectified, right?
Absolutely. And so working, relationships matter in this industry. And so,
100%.
Being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm about to do this. I know it's going to cause you to write this in your report. So how do I make it easier for you? And so I've found that if you're honest with opposing counsel and you carry through with what you're going to do, opposing counsel responds well and they respect you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I worked with Eric Nielsen, and then I met this amazing woman who I somehow tricked into being my wife. So I moved up for her, and I was very fortunate and worked for a very large plaintiffs firm out in Dallas.
Yeah.
And it was very well run. I learned a lot, made some great friends before switching over to the quote unquote dark side.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. So how long were you on defense for?
Less than a year.
Really?
Less than a year.
You're like just saying it. What was it? What was it? Like the billing, or what was it?
It's a multitude of things. But I could fundamentally say that our outlook on things is a little different.
Okay.
I distinctly remember having a conversation with one of the partners there, and this partner essentially is like, "Hey, your old firm, so and so, they're doing a lot of TBI cases." And I was like, "Yeah, they are." And this partner goes, "Well, that's just so hard for me to judge." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, I can't really tell if they're hurt or not, because it's TBI."
Okay.
And my response, looking back at it now, was it's probably not the best career-wise, which was, who are we to judge anyone? If someone says they're in pain, I'm going to believe them if they say that. And that's like a big philosophical difference.
Right.
Unfortunately,
because on the defense, it's the opposite, right? It's how do we disprove what they're saying and show it's X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah, it's some of that, and you have. There's good people on that side. There really
absolutely.
Are, and I think sometimes plaintiffs' attorneys get into this one-track mind that they're evildoers or whatever.
Right.
But in reality, it's like we need to prove our case. We need to show it's legitimate, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a run-of-the-mill, small visible property damage case. It's actually had an effect, and that this money is going to do something to improve their lives.
Right.
And I think once you get over kind of an inherent skeptic, which I think defense lawyers are, they start to jive with you and they believe in what you're saying.
Right.
And, you gotta, if you say you're going to do X, you got to do X. That's the other big part,
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So that's what happened. And then, my wife got this job here in Houston.
Yeah.
And, this is right around the pandemic, right? And I was kind of applying to jobs. I needed to start working here in Houston. and no one was hiring, man, because
I mean, we kind of had a pandemic going, so I mean, that'll do it.
yeah. So I reached out to my old boss, Andrew.
Yeah.
Said, hey, man, I've got this kind of experience. You think you can make a spot for me?
Yeah.
And so he's like, yeah. Why don't you come down and check it out and see if it's a good fit? And I've been here ever since, man.
Well, the AK law firm's known, so I mean, I don't know if that's you're doing or Andrew's doing, but you guys have been killing it lately. So,
Well, we've been very fortunate, and we hope that kind of continues.
so tell me about this case. So it's for our viewers, it's CRPS.
Complex regional pain syndrome. Yes.
Okay, what the hell is that?
Well, up until this case, I had no clue what it was either.
Okay.
And I'm going to try and do my best of explaining it.
So, and let me tell the viewers before we go into it, you were messaging me like, hey, I settled this for this amount. This is what the syndrome was. And I was like, okay, I like vaguely heard of that before. Mm-hmm. Never had a case like that, or that I know of. I might have, and I wouldn't have known. And I was like, how are you able to figure it out? I was like, and you told me, man, I was racking my brain over what the fuck my client was going through.
Sure.
And it just kind of hit me one day. So, I mean, tell us a little bit about the syndrome as best you can.
Right. So complex regional pain syndrome, the best I understand it, is that, for instance, in the what happened in our case.
Right.
We had a lady, she got in a pretty serious wreck with a tow truck driver.
Okay.
And she ended up having a wrist injury that required surgery. So sometime after getting the wrist surgery, her hand started to become discolored.
Okay. Like a bluish or like
almost like a whitish.
Okay.
It started to look scaly.
Getting really paley and scaly. Okay.
And she's African American, so darker complexion. So
right.
There's a difference.
right. That makes sense.
And so she also mentioned this constant sensation of burning, like she's constantly on fire.
Okay.
Any movement of her hand would make it worse.
Yeah.
And my thought was, well, you just need more physical therapy.
Sure.
Right. And it was so painful. She said every time she tried to do physical therapy,
right,
it would just make it worse. So
really, okay.
Yeah. And so we sent her. She was back at her surgeon, and they did a cubital release in her arm or in her hand, try and free her thumb up a little. Not any better. In fact, it starts getting worse. So, I just happened to be sitting down one day with an expert in another case, and I mentioned to him, this is kind of what's going on. I don't know what to make of this.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Like, who do I need to send her to, like, to tell me what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
Because apparently physical therapy is not working. The regular modalities that a personal injury trying to be like, hey, I need to have this expert look over and figure what this out, just weren't working.
No. And so, Mike, I'm sure you feel like this too when you believe in your client and they're not faking, they're not malingering. You want to do everything you possibly can to find them some help because win or lose, this client's going to be stuck with this condition for the rest of life.
So this was a tough case for you because you had this issue going on in the background, and then liability was tough too. So, I mean, for our viewers, kind of tell us like what happened.
Okay, so just kind of from the start, we had dash cam video of a tow truck driver pulling out.
Yeah.
Our client coming from the opposite side and then colliding in the median, essentially.
Okay, so they're both trying to turn like the opposite direction, and they meet in the median. And what I saw in the dash cam video, and we won't show it to our viewers, but he's got like the tow truck driver's got a little kid in the passenger seat. He's like messing with the little kid, like talking to her, and he's turning. He's obviously not paying attention as he comes into the median. And she looks like she not only stopped, but she had been in the median for a few seconds, and just bam. And they're saying it's 50-50, right?
Well, so interesting. Before we got that video internally, they were saying that was all the dash cam video they had. So I filed a motion to compel, and lo and behold, this video shows up. And
I don't know what happened. It's just, I guess I just had to dust this up. I don't know what happened.
Well, credit, I'll give credit where it's due.
Yeah.
There was a change in counsel, and the guy we finally got is a very competent defense lawyer. And he was very classy, and just really, we were very lucky to work with him in this case. And so he produced the video, and he's like, hey man, like I just didn't know it was here.
Right.
Here you go. So we get it. And so then the theory becomes, well, he was distracted. He wasn't looking when he was turning, right? So,
which is apparent in the video.
Yeah, and so our client didn't turn into you; you turned into her.
Right.
But again, I mean, as we looked at it, some experts were telling us it's 50-50,
Okay.
you know, as far as liability. So we were worried there.
So you're like, okay, I got this problem. I need to tilt back over and figure out what the hell my client is still, you know, going through. Are we looking at a case where she may need some, like, I don't know, some therapy or whatever it is to the hand, and then we're just going to try to get this resolved? Or, you know, what kind of made you trigger, like, okay, no, I need to really look into this and figure out and snuff out everything?
Yeah. So, I mean, I hate to admit it, but I think the initial offer is what really lit a fire under my ass. You know, they were offering, I think, $12,000 on this case.
How much of meds were submitted?
At that time, probably 50 or 60.
Okay. And they're like $5.
Yeah.
And, good luck with that.
Yeah. And so, you know, what happened, one thing I appreciate now, having worked on the defense, is that within the first couple of days, they have to write a report to the carrier. Okay. So we as plaintiffs' lawyers, if we want to get better settlement value and resolve cases faster, we need to get defense the stuff sooner.
Yeah.
Okay. So they can write a more favorable report.
The good stuff.
The good stuff.
It's tough to walk back an initial report, right?
Absolutely. And then you get locked into this, and then, you know, it's, you know, a very good defense lawyer and now mediator in Dallas taught me this. He goes, insurance companies are like these massive aircraft carriers, right?
Okay.
You know, if 1 degree here and there, you know, they're a little bit off in their initial evaluation, you guys are going to end up in Japan and they're going to be somewhere else, you know?
That's a good way to look at it. I never thought of it that way.
And so the other part of that analogy is that it takes a lot of time to turn it all.
Right.
So, you know, before you go into mediation, sending demands 45, 60 days before a mediation.
Right.
Getting it to the right people so that the defense lawyer can look at it and kind of, honestly, I used to look at it and use it as a template to write my report to the carrier.
Okay.
So that's something that I picked up on that side that I wish more people did.
To write like a thorough demand, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we get paid for this portion of it. So do that right.
Yeah.
And you make it's something. So when Jeff and I did a podcast a long time ago, he made a really good point, and I really like this point. He said, look, we're so busy and we're just trying to find our billables. So am I going to pick the one where I have to go through fucking everything and be really goddamn annoyed? No. Yeah. I'm going to pick the one that is perfectly done, like straightforward. I could write my report really quickly.
Yeah.
And I can bill the same amount of time. So it's fantastic for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, that's smart. That's smart. So I've always thought about that, like write your demands the right way and do that. I did not think about the time though. Yeah. I'm always like, I'm going to give this to you 26 seconds before I figure it out. Go by, you know, but you got to you got to give them time because, you know, they won't be pissed at you.
Because what ends up happening is you send the report, then they send it to their adjuster who then has to report to someone else who round tables it,
right.
Who then, if they need more authority, let's just say because the initial evaluation was off by a lot,
right?
Then they need to keep going up several chains of command.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst thing and some of the most disheartening things are when you show up to mediation, you've sent a demand a week before, and the defense attorney says, well, I don't have the authority for this. Well, well, crap. You know, not only did
what are we doing here?
Yeah, you waste your client's time, frustration, and you're frustrated too. And honestly, you frustrated the defense lawyer who, at the end of the day, the more I'll be candid with you, the better they like you, they want to advocate for you.
Right.
You know, they want to do because they know it's a legitimate claim. You know, It starts with credibility.
Hey, you know, you don't have to apologize here. I have this week. I literally told the defense lawyer, "Hey, man, thanks for going to bat for me."
Yeah,
because I knew it was a tough case. Mm-hmm. But you know, me and him both really liked my client.
Yeah,
like she was like a mother of this kid who has some issues, and you know, this set her back.
Yeah.
And so we resolved the case. We're both really nice about it. We tried to resolve the case, and he went to bat for me. He's like, "Look, this is what's going on." So I thanked him. It's not, you know, we like to go on like, you know, I guess TikTok and Instagram nowadays, but you know, we like to go on TV, quote unquote, and be like, but that's not how it works. That's not how you're gonna get good results. There's times to be like that.
Sure. and there's it's what's your brand? Like, be true
Yeah.
to yourself, right? I'm much more easier going, collegial.
Yeah.
I'll give you the extensions you need. I don't want to get you in trouble
Yeah.
because we have a relationship.
Right.
Because if I burn you on this one case, I'm going to see you at a different firm.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a time that it's 11 o'clock, right, on a day that expert designations are due, and I'm going to be asking for a favor. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is just a giant ecosystem. The better the plaintiffs lawyers do, the better the defense lawyers do.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's just kind of how it is.
So how long into the case did you figure out she had CRPS?
After our first failed mediation.
Okay, hold on. Hold on a second. So you took a plaintiff depot. I mean, you defended a plaintiff depot, took the defendant depot, corporate rep. Was it a corporate rep?
So he was an owner-operator, so it kind of served as both.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you guys say, let's go to mediation.
Yeah, because at that time, my evaluation of this was that she's got some ongoing wrist pain that is just due to the wreck, nothing else.
You can't figure out exactly the reason why she has this wrist pain, but you know she has it. She testified to it. It seems pretty consistent all the way through. Okay.
She's a single mom. You know, she's got bills to pay, things, life.
Right.
And so we agreed, let's go to mediation and talk to the defense lawyer. I kind of gave him an idea of what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
And he kind of told me, that's not too off of what I'm evaluating it at.
It's not too off. It's high, but it's not too off.
Sure.
That's how it always is.
If a defense lawyer tells you that's perfect, you've left money on the table. Unless it's policy limits.
I've never gotten perfect.
But, we to mediation.
Yeah.
And lo and behold,
and then all of a sudden, some shit just kind of pops off.
And it happens, right?
Yeah.
And
so what was it?
It was a video of my client kind of, she's using her right hand, which is the one that
she's complaining of.
Complaining of, she's in a club setting.
Okay.
She's using
partying. Come on now.
Yeah.
All right.
She's not there to babysit. Let's just say that, right?
She left the kid at home.
She left the kid at home, thankfully, right?
Yeah.
And again, our clients have lives. I mean, life goes on. She was
what was she doing?
Nothing crazy, just, pouring a drink with a heavy bottle with her right hand. So indicated to the defense lawyer.
Yeah.
Their theory is that something must have happened in the surgery that caused the wrist to now be screwed up.
So when was this taken? Was like after the surgery or before the surgery?
It was before surgery.
Okay.
So then, after surgery,
yeah,
right? And this is all like this happened like a year before we get to mediation, and so this is their defense liability. The surgeon screwed up. Okay.
Okay.
And honestly, I was kind of panicked. I'm like, well, there's some case law out there that says, if someone's injured while they're receiving medical treatment due to your negligence of hurting them, that
it falls through it.
Exactly.
Right.
But again, that's one more hurdle in this case.
Yeah, and the jury's not going to like that.
They're really, it's concerning, right?
Yeah.
So they tapped pretty early in the case, meaning they just were like, hey, they signaled to me and the mediator, hey, we're going to be stuck here.
Okay.
Not much more to move from here, unless you want to come off of the $1 million policy limits.
Right.
Right. And so, I had
and at the time you didn't evaluate it at $1 million.
I did not at that time.
Yeah,
that's correct.
That's fine.
Yeah,
that's okay.
And we had I think 150 in men's.
Yeah.
So to get $1 million, I mean, the damages or the award to your client is really commensurate to your damages.
Yeah, 150 in meds. Seems like everything's been resolved except for
the wrist surgery.
Risks that you don't really understand why she continues to have pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect $1 million on that either, man. Don't feel bad.
I didn't either. So, that happens. My client again is disheartened. She's like, I didn't know that these insurance companies just go follow you, do all this. And she gave me the story why her kids had pooled money together so that their mom can go out one night and have some fun to forget the worries of life.
I mean, realistically though, like you're not saying she doesn't have a hand. Like she can pour drinks. You never said she can't. It's just painful. And let's be honest, if you have a few drinks in you, it's going to be probably less painful.
Sure.
So, but I mean, I get where you're coming from. That's kind of scary. And then, the idea of having her, drinking in a club, being produced, you know.
Not great. And so anyways, we kind of go back to the drawing board and, I'm just kind of at a loss. I just don't know what to say. Like, how do I explain this? The client tries to go to physical therapy some more. It's just making the condition worse.
Right.
She starts talking about how her hand's almost like a hook.
Okay.
You know, it's like clawed. It's discolored. She's African American again,
Right.
and so her skin starts to get scaly and white.
Right.
It's like a fiery burning sensation, and so I just didn't know what was wrong with her. You know, and the wrist surgeon we had that she was working with at the time didn't really understand what was wrong with her too, and he just said, "Look, if she does more physical therapy, it'll go away." On the other hand, my client's saying it hurts to do physical therapy.
It's not going away.
Yeah. And then on that, you've got a trial setting marching up to you. So, yeah. And so you need to, when you're a plaintiff's attorney, and you know this too, is you need to be right as close to 100% as possible.
Yeah.
Because the jury's not going to cut you any breaks.
Yeah. It's our burden.
Yeah. It's our burden. You need to have you need to be one of the most credible in argument,
Always.
in presentation, everything.
Yeah.
And so, where's my credibility here? And so
true.
I happened to go to lunch with an ex-life care planner in a different case, because I like to build relationships with my folks, and let me take you out to lunch. So we sit down at lunch, and I just, hey, doc, do you know, this is kind of what's going on. It's giving me some heartburn. And he goes, I think she has CRPS. What is that? Yeah. And he goes,
you're like, no, she has her kids. The CPS is not here.
Well, yeah, right. And so we were really, I was like, what is that? And so he explains this to me, complex regional pain syndrome.
Okay.
And the way it was explained to me, and I've kind of learned, again, not a doctor,
right?
But my understanding of it is that there could be an injury site, like a surgical site, for instance.
Okay.
And that irritates the nerves in someone's body. And it ends up creating this constant feedback loop. The signal is constantly there. And so it ends up kind of overloading the circuits there, your wrist, and you're feeling this constant burning sensation. Okay. All right. And your hand ends up to atrophying because you don't want to use it as much. You start seeing skin discoloration, things like that. Things just wild. I've never even heard of this thing. Yeah. And so I did some research. I reached out to a better lawyer than me, someone who's a little bit more versed in this up in Dallas. Can I give him a shout out?
You can do it. Go ahead.
Ryan Pope up in Dallas did a great job. He and I were actually opposites on a case.
Really?
Yeah, we settled that case a week before he took my call. And he's like, "Oh man, what's going on?" And I tell him what's going on, and he looks at me and he goes, "How much coverage is there?" I said, "What? $1 million." And he goes, "It's not enough."
What?
I said, "Okay, hold up, explain this to me." So he sends me some great literature, and if you have questions, I really, reach out to him for sure. Yeah. I would happily answer what I know, but he definitely is the guru on this. And, he explains this to me. It's like, there's a pain index scale out there, and I think I showed it to you. Yeah. And it's crazy. Yeah, it's one of the most painful and most expensive conditions to have. Right. And
CRPS is.
CRPS, right? Yeah. That's super, super expensive to treat because
the pain scale is ridiculous. It was like from 1 to 50, and it was like an amputation of a limb
is less painful than this.
Yeah. Like by like a hair. And I was like, what?
Yeah. And so when I saw that, my eyes kind of bugged out, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So what's the solution? Okay.
Dude, if I saw that, like, I don't even know. I'm like debating, like, I would at mediation just be like, hey man, like, we're not going to mediate this case until you get in this car that I've ordered for you and go to a recent billboard that I just got. And on that billboard, I would just have that pain scale. Yeah. And just highlight that. Yeah. Because that's ridiculous.
It was shocking to me. It really, really was. And, the thing that I took away from this is that as a plaintiff's lawyer, so number one, always fight for your client, always.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Do whatever it takes to get them help, relief, because at the end of the day, this case may settle, but they're still stuck with that for the rest of their life.
Yeah, it's like always the saying, we may have 100 cases this year, but that client only has one case for their life. Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. Right. Maybe a couple, whatever. Sure. But like, they only have one time to actually get my money, and it's hard to like click that in sometimes, because you're doing this and that, and you're like, well, hold on, we need to stop. We need to really reevaluate this because you only have one shot at this.
Yeah. One shot, one opportunity.
Jesus.
And so, I hear this information.
Yeah.
Kind of figure out that she needs to go to a pain management doc who needs to do an evaluation, do a stimulator test. Okay. So they actually went into her neck. They put in a stimulator, just a temporary one, to see if it really is CRPS. You'll see that the pain in her wrist goes away. She'll be able to move it more. And lo and behold, it worked. And it was such a sigh. I remember I was at 6 p.m. It was a Friday on a 6 p.m. I was at home, and she called me to thank me.
Because she had figured out what it was.
She said, she's like, Mr. Pulkit, this is the first time in almost a year and a half that I can go to sleep without feeling that pain.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's one of those moments where you're just like, thank God.
Yeah.
Had I not talked to that expert to take him out to lunch, this wouldn't have happened. I mean, it just, too many things went right for me not to say there's some type of divine intervention, helping us out.
Because you were sitting there like, dude, offer's bad.
Yeah.
I think I win on liability, but they don't think so.
Yeah.
The client's still hurt. Can't figure out what the fuck's going on with her.
Yeah.
And you have this sense that we all do with our clients that like, she's not bullshitting. Like, there is something genuinely wrong. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. I can't figure it out, but there's something. And yeah, you're right, man. A little divine intervention is not too bad.
Sure.
So did you guys end up mediating it again?
So what ends up happening is I get this new theory of liability, of damages,
right?
And I send it over to them, and they say, your client said that she had lupus. I was like, okay. They're like, well, lupus causes this joint pain too.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, like really?
Yeah.
Okay. And so,
So you have your theory, and they're like, we already thought about that. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah, kind of, in a nicer way for sure. But but it's just one of those things. I'm like, well, how do I get over this hurdle?
Yeah.
Well, then, I look through some of the records.
Yeah.
Okay. And the defense is telling me, hey, we're going to send her to a rheumatologist.
Right.
We're going to do a blood draw, and you're going to show certain proteins in the blood that indicate that you have lupus. Yeah.
Right.
And lupus can cause joint pain. Okay.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Right. It's usually bilateral joint pain, though. So always remember that. So it's going to affect both wrists equally. Not the case here. Okay. And turns out in her blood work, way down, almost a year ago.
Yeah.
Okay. She tested negative. She had none of those markers at all.
Huh.
So at that time, I was like, man, like, I don't know, man. It's like, maybe it is, maybe it's not, but I'm feeling pretty good about myself at this point. So go back to
you can refute that pretty easily.
Yeah, I believe so too. We go back to mediation, and they maybe I'm getting the sequence of events off a little bit because it's been a bit, but I think I actually discovered the lupus thing. Let me actually.
Yeah,
I screwed up. My bad.
No, you're fine.
All right, so essentially, the first mediation happens. I figure out the CRPS diagnosis. I send him a demand, Stowers again, obviously.
Right.
And we go to mediation, and I'm thinking, hey, you're going to pay me $1 million.
Yeah, this is it. What are we doing here?
Yeah, and then they produce more footage.
Okay.
And it just kind of paints our client from the same night, using her wrist more, all that. I think I've gotten over that hurdle.
Right.
And then the last thing they say to me is, well, what about her lupus? And I was like, what about her lupus? Like, well, that could be her joint pain. Cause of her joint pain. Right. So at that point, I was just like, I don't know. I just don't think that's it. And they offered me a lot of money.
Yeah.
More money than I usually get on cases.
Yeah.
I talked to my client, and she just looked at me and she was like, hey, you've been through this with me a lot. Like, I'll go get this stimulator to test out if I actually have CRPS. It's diagnostic and therapeutic as well. She gets a CRPS stimulator after mediation, where I rejected the offer because I really believe that she hadn't, CRPS. Right. And so a couple of things went right. She gets a stimulator. Turns out that she has a positive experience, meaning that her pain goes away. She can sleep at night. She calls me and says, "Hey, look, this is the first time in like almost a year and a half that I've been able to sleep without pain."
Yeah.
And so I knew at that moment, I'm like, we're taking this to trial. We're going to move forward.
Right.
And then, again, on a Friday night, I get a call from the defense lawyer.
Friday nights are your nights, apparently. But anyways.
Yeah, gives me a call, and he's like, "Hey, just want to let you know that we've evaluated it. I think the carrier thinks that there's a potential argument to CRPS, your life care plan's in the millions, to protect my good client." And they had some great defendants, by the way. They had a really hardworking dad, and then the mom, who's the safety director of that tow truck company, is a firefighter for the city of Houston. So so just talk about just good people, right?
Yeah.
And so they were trying to build that contrast between what who my single mom was versus these folks. And just imagine
hardworking Americans, and this lady's out here just getting drunk and taking advantage of people.
Yeah, and
is what their theme was.
And she ran into him, etc. Whatever. And so it's a money grab, etc. But we changed the narrative, right? By doing these little things. And the guy called me. He goes, "Hey, I just want to call you and congratulate you on your first $1 million settlement."
How'd that feel?
I think my initial response to him was, "Thank you."
Yeah.
I will let my client know, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you for working with me on this. And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You got a good client, but it's the right thing to do for my client."
Yeah.
And we got it settled. I called my client, and she said, originally she called me when I called her. She goes, "So we're done? We don't have to do this anymore?"
We don't do this anymore?
I said, "No, unless you want to keep going." She's like, "No."
She's like, "I'm done."
I'm done. And so we settled the case, and she just can't believe it. She's very grateful.
Yeah.
She's getting the stimulator put in full time. So it's just one of those heartwarming moments where the right outcome happened the right way. She's been diagnosed with what she's got. She's going to be able to go to any doctor in the world and figure out this situation that's been bothering her for a while.
It's weird because whenever we think of we're changing the world, right? I mean, you laugh and I laugh too, but
one person at a time.
Yeah, but no, but what I mean by that is that all right, for example, me and Jeff took this terrible case.
Sure.
Okay, when I say a terrible case, I happened to just ask for an expert on the forums, and they're like, "You need to drop this case. I don't know what you're doing with it. There's no damage," and there weren't any damages. Okay, I won't get too much into it, but essentially, it was with a spa place, and they just brought this minor in. And anyways, so nothing really happened to the minor, but he got pricked by a needle. Okay, none of this matters. I'm not gonna get too much into facts, but what was really interesting is that we got a good settlement for the minor with no damages. It's gonna pay for that minor's college.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the interesting part. The interesting part to me was they agreed as part of the settlement to change their procedure in doing this, and I forget how it worked out, but they changed it so that it would be out of reach of minors and all this stuff. And we won't get too much into it. What was interesting is that now they have a chain of places in Houston, Dallas, and I won't name the place. And I was like, damn, I made a fucking change. It's not a big change, but I made a change. But what you just described is something that we don't talk about very often, is that you literally changed this woman's life.
Yeah.
You figure out her pain, that she's in excruciating pain. And again, on a scale of 1 to 50, this was one of the highest ones. It was higher than losing a limb.
Like the McGill pain scale, if someone wants
That's
to
what
look
it's
that
called.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. DM Mike if I'm wrong, though. He told me to say that.
I didn't say anything, man. You just showed me a scale. I was like, this is pretty cool. And then you showed me where it was. I was like, that's not cool. That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
But, to get someone to go from there to, man, I'm not having any pain. I figured this out. And you've been able to compensate them so that they can deal with it for the rest of their life. That's huge. That person's going to remember you for the rest of their life.
Yeah. And that's one of many, not all of them are $1 million settlements.
No.
But, it's one of those that, you did the right thing. And,
you literally, left no stone unturned.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And kind of got a little bit of divine intervention to figure out, because I don't know, man. I think if I was in your position, I'd be a little terrified. I'm like, fuck, I can't figure this out.
Yeah.
It's stressful, and then it's almost like you look back on your first mediation, because I'm sure there's a part of you that was like, maybe we should wait a little bit, get a little bit more, and then resolve this and move on. I'm sure there's a piece of you. There's a piece of us in all of us, right? Like that's part of being on the contingency side. But to wait, be patient, and say there's a process here. I just don't see it yet. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and just the big thing, man, just believe your client, tell the story, develop a relationship with defense counsel early.
Yeah.
When you say you're going to do something, do it. I'm going to file a motion to compel. Okay, motion to compel. Oh, here's video. Here's documents and procedures. Here you go.
Yeah.
So I mean, you really, it comes back to, that relationship with your client, man. Just really building that up and that trust too. Yeah. Because she's talking to me. She's like, "Hey, do you really want me to go get this thing put in my neck?" And I'm sitting here like, I mean, yeah. Okay. If you think it's gonna help, I sure fucking hope so.
See, and that's like the number one thing, right? Like, because a lot of attorneys, people get this idea about attorneys that we're just kind of in it for ourselves. It's not real. I mean, it isn't.
I mean, let's be candid, right? There is a reward to be had in this and in contingency fee, but the real benefit that I feel comes from the work that you and I do. Yeah, is that you really do change someone's life. Yeah, hopefully for the better. Yeah, yeah.
Better than what they are after the incident, no matter what. Because after the incident, they're in usually the worst part of their life ever.
Yeah.
Right.
It kind of. It's kind of my philosophy in life too. It's like, people ask you, what's the meaning of life? It's to reduce suffering and to reduce pain of others and make the world better. And I think that's what you're doing when you go about doing that.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. That's not a bad way to look at it. I look at life as just, I'm here and I'm going to see how this ends up, but it's probably a better way to look at it.
Do a couple of good things on the way out, right?
I don't know, man. Like I think I told you off, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. No.
But by the way, Mike's getting married, y'all. Everyone, let's tell me the details.
Oh my God,
let's get him out there.
We're not doing
that. Let's gate crash. But yeah, man. I mean, this is awesome. Just wanted to say, like, I've been listening to your podcast for a while, like before we even really knew each other. Yeah. And I think what you're doing is awesome, man.
Hey, man, I appreciate that.
There aren't that many young lawyers who are doing what you're doing, and it's great. It's great. You learn something from everything. Everyone check out Mike's podcast. listen
I appreciate
to
that, man. Like legitimately, and I want to cut it short for our viewers, but I mean legitimately I started this because I was like, unless you know someone, you're not going to get a mentorship. Yeah. Right. And then your mentor could be trash and you don't even know it. I mean, legitimately, it could happen. You're like, okay, I learned how to settle a case, and you're selling it for garbage. Yeah. But when I started reading like Damages 3, started listening to some of Keith Mitnick's stuff, all this stuff, I was like, man, like there's so much there that is just not, when you hear an attorney who's like, I got a $70 million verdict. That's dope. I don't have a $70 million case on my docket. My docket is a low impact case with someone who's had 10 priors and is looking real rough for this, and they don't want to offer anything. And it's Allstate, right? There isn't a podcaster because no one wants to talk about that, right?
Yeah, those are tough cases.
Yeah, they are.
Just very tough cases. Yeah.
But if you learn how to deal with that and get help and go to like my podcast or anyone else's, or read the right things, you start learning the techniques of how to deal with it. And you might lose that case. That's fine. Yeah. But you'll learn how to like what those processes are on the big one, so you don't lose that case.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's one way to look at it for sure. Yeah, that's I hadn't thought about it that way, but it's just they're getting the reps in, man. That's really what it is.
That's exactly right. Because everybody expects you to lose that case. Yeah. They don't expect you to lose a $70 million case with the people with no limbs and it's a drunk driver, right?
Yeah, you don't want your first trial to be that. I'm sure there's someone out there that was their first trial and they did great.
I hope not.
That's far and few between. But
that's true. But thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on. I'll put your contact information at the bottom of this. If anyone gets to contact you, want to talk about this case or any other case, because you and I always spitball about ideas. Yeah. You always come up with something fresh. I'm like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. Sure. I should have thought about it that way. So get in contact with them.
Thanks, guys. I don't know how good that was or bad.
That was
sweating
good.
the whole time.